Hey everybody, Lieutenant Joe here for the Blue Heart Podcast, brought to you by our sponsors, Blue360Media.com, the greatest publishers of law enforcement stuff in the world, by Riot Tint. They make safety glazing, safety film for doors and windows, absolutely amazing. And MedicalEssentialDiagnostics.com in the state of New Jersey. If you're any kind of a government worker in any capacity, first responder, you can go to them, you and two adults in your family, and get a health screening, soup to nuts, at no cost to you. Find out if you're healthy. All right. So along our path here, one of the things I want to talk about was other agencies that you could get involved with and how they can help you and what they can do. All right. So you might be a municipal police officer, state police officer. You could be one of the federal agencies, county officer. There's lots of different groups. From my perspective, I was a municipal officer, right? We worked with the county strike force. We worked with the county prosecutor's office, the other towns around us. We worked with state police, federal agencies all the time. It was just the nature of the beast. What we didn't understand, and I didn't when I first became a detective, was how interactive these other agencies can be with you and how much they're willing to be helpful, right? And different things like that. So it's just not something you always think of. I'm telling you, you should think of it. And that's what I'm going to talk about, which agencies we used and how we got along. So you would think, first of all, the DEA, Drug Enforcement Administration. That's a big time job. I almost joined the DEA in like 1990, but I got pretty good intel that if you join the DEA, you're going to like Brownsville, Texas, and that's where you're going to be stationed for 5 years. My wife didn't want to move to Texas at the time, so I chose not to go. But long story short, I was doing a marijuana grow, an indoor marijuana grow case, which at the time marijuana was illegal, and an indoor grow was pretty good. We arrested a young man with a couple of bags of marijuana, and he was a fireman, and he was going to lose his position to be a fireman. He was willing to do anything to work for us and help us. And he says, "I know a guy who's growing marijuana in his house." And I said, "Okay, who?" And he tells us this was a regular, upstanding citizen in a beautiful neighborhood, the whole 9 yards. And we went out there, and one of the techniques we used to do back then, and you didn't need a search warrant for it, you'd still do it today, but now in most places, you need a search warrant, is that we went out, he gave us the address, and we went and looked, and it was a beautiful home in a beautiful neighborhood. And the kid told us, he pointed out the house, he goes, "You see that second floor up there? Well, that whole second floor, the guy's got a grow going. He's got to have 200 plants up there. He's got grow lights in the middle. He's got these giant grow lights. He's got water up there. He's got hoses. He has hoses going up, all this kind of stuff." So what we did is we did surveillance. We went to the neighbor next door. We looked and we could see the hose going upstairs into the building, right? Then we got a heat source light where you could look at a camera and you could see a heat source. And this was brought to us by the DEA. We called them and said, "You fellas got one of these things?" They're like, "Yeah." And they sent two agents right down. Now we figured, oh, the DEA, federal agency, they're going to come down, want to take over this. They couldn't have been nicer. They were excellent. They were like, "Hey, how can we help?" Right? You would just think that they're so busy on, multi-kilo jobs that they don't have time. They actually do have time. So if you have a drug case, reach out to them. Don't be afraid. If they're busy, they'll tell you they're busy. So they came down and we lit the house up, looking at it. And right in the middle where this kid said the grow lights were, the camera showed the inside was glowing with heat, right? And that helped us to get our search warrant to go in there. And we went in and we found tons of plants. And he did convert the whole second floor to growing marijuana. It was really great. But the DEA, they also came for raid day. They sent us two agents came down and they're like, "What do you guys need? We got manpower. You need 50 people? What do you want?" Like, that two is fine. We have a raid team, come on down. And they came down. They were excellent to work with. Another group that I worked with a lot, and this is one a lot of people never think of, and that's the Postal Inspectors Service. All right, Tom Tritola, how you doing, buddy? We did a lot of work with Special Agent Tritola, Special Agent in Charge, I think, Tom Tritola. He lived in our town, but he worked out of Newark, New Jersey. And what I found out was anytime anything that is to do with a crime that you're investigating goes through the mail, anything to do with that crime, you can get the postal inspectors involved. You think postal inspectors, mailmen are going to come help me? No, they're a whole investigative agency. And the thing is, they have manpower, they have equipment, they have money, and they're willing to help. They would rather help you and then have you sign criminal complaints in state court than go through the federal system, which is a pain in the neck. Not always, but most of the time. So we did a lot of jobs. Matter of fact, every single time after that, any job, any case that we had that involved mail fraud, credit cards that came through the mail, stolen information, anything that came through the mail, we would call Tom and say, hey, can we get some guys? Absolutely. He sent people down immediately. We were doing a drug case, and the guy was mailing, they were mailing 5 pounds of weed at a time from Arizona to New Jersey, going through FedEx or UPS or one of the commercial carriers. But the information and the money was going back and forth in the mail. So we got them involved, and we said, well, we want to buy a pound from this guy. We got an informant that could go in and buy a pound, but he only sells pounds. And this kid can do it, and we don't have the money. He goes, what do you need? 10,000? I'll bring 10,000 and down and bring people. They brought people, they brought money. They were great. Anything to do with the mail, you reach out to the postal inspectors. They can be very, very helpful. And Tom was a great guy. We did a lot of great cases together. Right. And I guess one of the ones that we all think about, the FBI. So I guess over time, in the last couple of years, the FBI has gotten a pretty bad rap in some areas because of their upper management and how they behave politically. I'm not talking about them. We're talking about the agents on the ground. I had great experience with every man and woman from the FBI. Couldn't have been more helpful. They're not looking to take over your case. They are there to help. They really are. They have resources that we don't always have, databases that we don't have, things that they can get to. So one of the interesting cases that I found was working with an FBI profiler. Now, I don't know about you, but I guess you can tell from some of my programs, I love investigations. I love going deep into an investigation, figuring things out, forensics. To me, it was just the most interesting thing in the whole world. And working with a profiler, I did it a couple of times. And I found it absolutely fascinating how these men and women in the profile unit can look at the facts of a case and then come up with a profile of a potential suspect that is shocking. It is absolutely shocking. So here's the story. We had a bank robber who was going around doing bank jobs in Monmouth County, New Jersey, right? And our town was in Monmouth County. And we got hit. One of these things, guy would go in with a mask, a funky hat, and glasses, and a backpack. And he'd go in, he had a note, he'd rob the bank, take off, run, and get a car somewhere. But he was never parked where the bank was. And away he'd go. And at the time, there were no Ring cameras. There was nothing like that. So people in the neighborhood just see a car parked there and away the guy go. So the place that he hit was in a strip mall, but it was in like a shape of a U. There was all businesses around, restaurants and stuff, and the bank. And this guy hit the bank. That got us involved in the spree. Well, he hit towns around us, and I guess altogether, he maybe did 10 or 11 bank jobs, right? 10 or 11 bank jobs. And in one of them, he was actually witnessed, somebody saw him get into a vehicle, and it was a small little SUV. I think a Jimmy, GMC Jimmy SUV, and take off. And while we were investigating, somebody come up and say, I saw a guy run around that corner over there, and there was this little Jimmy. He jumped in it and took off. I didn't get the plate, but the guy, it just looked like he was wearing a wig or something. I'm like, whoa, that's good. That's our guy. What kind of wig? He describes in the bank. People describe him. That's our guy. Now we know he's driving a Jimmy. So because it's bank jobs, the FBI, the local FBI office, field office, had sent people out, and they came out every time we had a bank job. So we got to know them all because there was so many of them. So if the next town over got hit, one of us that were working our job would go over there, see what they got. Is it similar, different person, right? So we put together this list of all these jobs of a guy with a hat, glasses, a wig, and backpacks doing these, whatchamacallits, bank jobs. Well, the FBI profiler takes all of these reports and gets copies of them and goes over them and over and over, and then comes back to us with a profile of who they believe we should be looking for, the kind of suspect we should be looking for. And I don't remember the entire list, though I think I have it stored around here somewhere because I found it so interesting. I think they said he would be a white male, 40 years old. I think it was like 35 and 40, 40 years old. He would probably be someone who works with his hands in some kind of a metal related field. He would dabble in marijuana. Um, he would drive this SUV, and on the weekends, he liked to go camping. He came up with like 40 different things on this list of what we should be looking for. And it seemed like uncanny. Like how could you say he dabbled in marijuana and he worked in metallurgy in some way, right? How would you come up with that? I don't know. But they gave us this list, and we kept it around, and we're trying to compile the list. And then one day, I think it was Middletown, New Jersey, but I could be wrong. He did a bank job, and somebody saw him, and the cops were close by, and they put it out, and now they get into a pursuit with this guy, and they're chasing him, and everybody's listening. It's on the state police emergency network. Everybody's listening. He's going town to town, right up and down the shore area. Well, he ends up crashing. The guy crashes during this pursuit. He wouldn't pull over. He was going over 100 miles an hour. And he crashes, as I remember, into an abutment, one of those concrete abutments on the highway between the things. Probably he was going to go try and make a turn and get off the road, and he hit the abutment. Well, the horrible part for him was when he hit it, he wasn't wearing a seatbelt, and he went through the window. But as he went through the window, his lower half went across the steering wheel in such a way as that he left some of his anatomy on the steering wheel from his lower portions, if you know what I'm talking about. Out the window he goes, and he leaves his personal areas hanging from the steering wheel, if you can imagine such a thing. And out the window he goes. Now he's dead. He dies in that thing. Well, we find out where he lives. Son of a gun, he lives in our town, right? So, of course, we go over there. We have to, first of all, make notification, tell the wife that he's dead. We find he has a wife and a daughter. We go over there. We have a search warrant, of course, to search the house. And we talk to the wife. Well, this woman, first of all, is devastated. Her husband is dead. Devastated. Her husband is dead. Then we tell her he's a bank robber, and she can't believe it. I mean, a bank robber? A banker? He's not. He's a sheet metal guy. He works with sheet metal. And that opened our eyes. Sheet metal, that would be a metallurgist of some kind, wouldn't it? Now we have a search warrant, and we're going to search the house. In his bedroom, we found the tiniest bag of marijuana and a little roach. And she goes, is he a marijuana user? She goes, no, not really. Every once in a while, he'll take a little hit. He dabbled in marijuana use. So I said, we're looking for backpacks. And she goes, well, he's a camper. He goes camping a lot. And there's a whole bunch of backpacks around here. He's a camper. He dabbles in marijuana. He works with sheet metal. I mean, you just name it off the list. White guy, 40 years old. Out of the 40-something things on the profilers list, this guy was 25 or 26 of them. It was unbelievable. Long end of the story is that we did find some incriminating things in the house. We also found he had a storage unit, like a 5x5 storage unit that the wife didn't know anything about. We got a search warrant, went there. Every one of the backpacks used in the jobs was in there. The hats, the masks, he used a different one each time. Where he found all these things, we have no idea. But there was like 10 or 11 of these disguises. That's where he kept everything, disassociated from his house where his family lived. But the point being is that this profiler was right on. I mean, right on. Unbelievable. So my point being for this episode is don't hesitate to look and see what your county has to offer. Look and see what your state police has to offer, and look at the federal agencies. They're out there to help you do investigations. They have manpower, money, and equipment that you might not have, and they can be very helpful. And I found them all to be really decent, great law enforcement officers. So I want to thank everybody for being here. Remember, look at our sponsors, buy my books, tell your friends about the show, please, and have them like and subscribe. Until we meet again, remember, be a part of the solution, my friends, not a part of the problem.